What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you live for the first time today from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. Now, originally, but when I was doing my research, I decided, you know what, we'll be better off doing two just to make it easier for time restraints and all that good stuff. So regardless, as you can see by the title of this video, we're going to be discussing the most likely Hall of Famer from each team in the AFC. Now, I do have a couple of rules that I want to point out before we start discussing the video. So, of course, we're going to go team by team, and this is only going to be the AFC. I'm going to do alphabetical order by their location. But there will be a couple of honorable mentions for players who have retired within the past 5 years that have a very good chance at making the Hall of Fame and will be in the Hall of Fame soon. An example of this will, of course, be Joe Thomas. Would, of course, be Joe Thomas. He'll be in the Hall of Fame when he's first eligible. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He was a definite amazing player. We'll get to him in the future. I will also mention a few Hall of Famers for one team who are currently playing on another team. Now, one example of this would be, of course, Tom Brady. We're going to discuss him with the Buccaneers, but we're going to mention him with the Patriots. So in this video, you'll hear I'll mention him, whereas in the next video, I'll actually talk about him. Now, another thing is we will not be discussing owners, and we will not be discussing coaches. You know, that's potential other video idea. I mean, owners are so up in the air, it's kind of hard to figure out, like, which active owner could you really make a case for being in the Hall of Fame right now that isn't already in the Hall of Fame? I mean, you could try to tell me Robert Kraft or Jeffrey Lurie. No, those guys don't necessarily belong in there yet. Maybe in the future, maybe Kraft in the future, but I mean, off-field concerns are kind of upsetting people right now too. So, lastly, too, these are my opinions. So, of course, you can feel free to disagree with me. Last thing I do want to say, I skipped over this one, is that no players drafted in the 2018 draft or more recently, so 2018 through 2021, will be mentioned as the primary player in their team's, or as their team's most likely Hall of Famer, I guess would be the best way to put it. They can be mentioned in the honorable mention segment, but they will not be the top player. Just because 4 years isn't enough time to figure it out. You know, anyone else, 2017 or older, at least you played basically 5 years at this point. Anyways, without further ado, I do want to point out that the gameplay that I have going on is going to be one game that I'm looking forward to, Colts at Cardinals Week 16. Of course, Cardinals are trending in the wrong direction, Colts are trending in the up direction, so should be good. Now, we're going to start off here with the Baltimore Ravens. My pick is kicker Justin Tucker. Yep, I'm going out with a somewhat bold statement here with my very... this. Tucker is currently the most accurate kicker in NFL history. As of right now, he has hit 90.9% of his kicks. And he has the record for the longest field goal in the league's long history, which is of course set this year in a win against the Lions. It was a game-winning kick, and it's 66 yards. Not easy to do. I mean, there's a reason that the previous record was 64. It stood for a while. Now, it is a tall order to say that Tucker will be only the third, well, fourth, but we'll get into that in a little bit, pure kicker in the Hall, but at his current pace, it's looking strong. He is a 4-time first-team All-Pro, a 2-time second-team All-Pro selection, a 4-time Pro Bowler, and he was a unanimous selection to the NFL 2010's All-Decade team. Not bad for an undrafted free agent. Now, for honorable mention, I'm going to mention, of course, quarterback Lamar Jackson. Now, he was drafted in 2018, so it's too early by my, my rules to include him as the top pick. But with the way he's been playing, he has an MVP to his name, and he was doing amazingly this year before for the first half of the year. If he can keep up this strong pace, if he can keep up the two-way play, and if he can ideally get himself a ring, he'll probably have his ticket punched. But it's going to take some time. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Bills, for me, my pick is cornerback Tre'Davious White. Now, White is probably not like the best pick of all my players here, but hear me out. Buffalo is one of the younger teams in the league, and with Josh Allen disqualified by my guidelines, White becomes the easy, obvious choice. A first-round pick in 2017, White has slowly developed into one of the NFL's better lockdown corners. He may not get the high interception totals, but that is because quarterbacks fear throwing the ball in his general direction. He is a one-time first-team All-Pro, one-time second-team All-Pro, and a two-time Pro Bowler. And while his 2021 season may have ended early due to a torn ACL, the sky's the limit for White. So, I'm looking forward to it, but, White's not going to be in today. Is the best way to put it. Now, an honorable mention for Buffalo is, of course, wide receiver Stephon Diggs. He was doing pretty good in Minnesota. He had a couple really good elite years, and since coming over to Buffalo, he's been playing at a high level. But as we know, wide receivers, there's better receivers that are still waiting to get in the hall, so Stephon Diggs will need to continue to dominate. Now we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and you're going to hear this a couple times. My pick for them is not available. Now, I hate to do this, but there's no one on the Bengals roster that fits my criteria. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Joe Mixon all have potential, but they're too young. Obviously, Jamar Chase is a rookie. Joe Burrow's second year. Mixon, he isn't there yet. Mixon's probably the least likely of the three. By far the least likely of the three. I'm not saying something. So, we'll have to see. Now, honorable mention, I got to go with offensive tackle Andrew Whitworth. Now, Whitworth spent a very strong 11 years in Cincinnati, and he has aged like a fine wine since joining the Rams in 2017. He should be a lock for Canton, but which team will he go in as a member of? That's the real question with him. He spent longer in Cincy, but he's really started to improve a bit in LA. So, now the other player I want to discuss is defensive tackle Geno Atkins. Atkins was beloved by the fans. He made 8 Pro Bowls, but he didn't receive the All-Pro selections, 2 first team, 1 second team. So, there's that. He also is currently a free agent, but he did spend, so far, his only 11 years in the NFL as a member of the Bengals. I think if you go by players who are not on rosters, he's probably the most likely future Hall of Famer for Cincinnati, but next, we have the Cleveland Browns, and I chose defensive end Myles Garrett. The first overall pick in the 2017 draft, Garrett has been a force since joining the Browns. While he may not have the stats yet, he's getting there. He's a very strong edge rusher, and he's underrated when it comes to run stuffing as well. He does it all. The only thing holding him back a bit is his age. He's barely at just under 5 years in the league, and we're not even getting into a suspension with that. So, as of right now, he's a one-time first-team All-Pro selection, one-time second-team All-Pro, and a two-time Pro Bowler. Now, honorable mention, of course, I already mentioned it before, is offensive tackle Joe Thomas. It's not a question of if, but rather when will Thomas make the Hall of Fame. He was one of the best tackles in the modern era. All at his 6-time first-team All-Pro selections, his 2-time second-team All-Pro selections, and his 10 Pro Bowl appearances across only 11 seasons speak for themselves. Then you got the Denver Broncos, and I'm going with linebacker Von Miller. I'm cheating here, but Miller did play with the Broncos in 2021, and there are a few other players worth discussing on the Rams, which is why I don't mind discussing him here in Whitworth in Cincinnati. It's just, the Rams have so many players, but we'll get to them in the next video. So, Von Miller has been nothing short of a stud since being picked in the first round of the 2011 draft, and he has the potential to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Obviously, 2020 didn't help him out, but regardless, he's still a very good player at this point. He helped to guide the Broncos to win Super Bowl 50, as he was the heart and soul of that defense. Ironically, that Super Bowl saw the second overall pick in 2011, of course Miller, pretty much dominate the first overall pick in that draft, the 2011 draft, Cam Newton. Now, Miller is a 3-time first-team All-Pro, 4-time second-team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, and he is a member of the NFL 2010s All-Decade Team. He is also a Super Bowl MVP because he just played so well that game. Electric, I remember I voted for him, so. Alright, next we've got the Houston Texans. And this one is also not available at this point in time. There isn't anyone who I really have that, fits the criteria. It really doesn't need too much explaining. If you really want a name, I'll say Deshaun Watson, of course, but his off-the-field concerns, which have kept him out for the entire 2021 season, are a massive red flag. So until that is settled, I'll say running back David Johnson. Yikes. It's not going to happen. So, I mean, yeah. Honorable mention, wide receiver Andre Johnson. Now, Johnson joined the Texans during their second season in the league, which was 2003, and he quickly emerged as one of their best players, if not their absolute best. His 7 Pro Bowl selections and 4 All-Pro selections are enough to put him on the radar. He's also 11th all-time in receiving yards. He definitely has a pretty good chance at making the Hall of Fame. Will it be first ballot or not is the real question. He'll be the first, pure Texan to be in the Hall of Fame, though. Pure Houston Texan. Next, we have the Indianapolis Colts. This is a tough one just because of the criteria I have set, but I'm going with wide receiver T.Y. Hilton. Now, Hilton may not have the strongest case of the players I'll be discussing today, but he has been one of the more consistent wide receivers in the league. For a brief stretch in the mid-2010s, Hilton was elite. Will that stretch with luck be enough to get him in the Hall? He is a 4-time Pro Bowler, and he led the league in receiving yards once. He needs to stay healthy, he needs to stay on the field, and there's a chance. Next, we get to the honorable mentions, and there's a good amount of them here for Indianapolis. First, we have defensive end Dwight Freeney. Now, Freeney is probably the best Connecticut-born NFL player in history. He was a complete force on the defensive side of the ball and the defensive line for a decade and a half, as he currently sits 18th all-time in career sacks. I don't know if he has a case, but he'll get some votes. Then you have kicker Adam Vinatieri. Vinatieri is going to make the Hall of Fame, no doubt about it. And he should be inducted as a Colt because he spent the majority of his career in Indianapolis. He is the second most points in NFL history, but more importantly, he was also a part of 4 Super Bowl winning teams, and he made clutch kicks during all of those games. Of course, the first one being his first Super Bowl win, and Tom Brady's first Super Bowl win, and the Patriots' first Super Bowl win against the greatest show on turf. So, yep. Next, we have quarterback Andrew Luck. Now, I highly doubt Luck will make the Hall of Fame since he only played 7 years in the league, but he was very, very good in that time, and is worth, at minimum, just a mention. We have guard Quentin Nelson next. Now, Nelson is too young to qualify for this list by my standards, but he is more than worth mentioning. He has been arguably the best guard in the entire league since he was drafted in 2018. The best has yet to come for him. Lastly, for them, we have linebacker Darius Leonard. Like Nelson, he is too young to qualify, but he is one of the best linebackers in the game, and he has a good chance to make it if he keeps producing at the level he has been. Yup. Those were a lot of honorable mentions for the Colts. 5 of them there, but I couldn't leave out any of them. I mean, there's Quentin Nelson, speak of him, but yeah. Next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And of course, for the Jaguars, we have a not available player. Again, this is really surprising. I'll mention the upside of Trevor Lawrence and the strong production upside of defensive end Josh Allen, but no one on this team is anywhere near Hall of Fame worthy right now. There's still time, but it's not there yet. Not there yet. Honorable mention for them, cornerback Jalen Ramsey. Sorry, Rams, I'm stealing a third player from you in this video. Now, Ramsey was a complete and utter force in Jacksonville. He was elite, a superstar. Unfortunately, he had a massive falling out with the Jaguars during his 4th year with the team, and even if he makes the Hall of Fame, he won't go in as a Jaguar. He left cryptic messages enough to say, I'm done with Jacksonville. Next, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. And this was a really tough one for me because there's 2 guys that, to me, are definite Hall of Famers. But I'm going to go with the one I want to talk a little bit more about, and that's quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Now, Mahomes is a generational quarterback. He does it all. He can run, and he has a cannon for an arm. In the future, I'll probably be doing a Players Drafted Before video on him. Although, that 2017 draft class was pretty solid, so it's not like he had a bunch of whiffs before him, and it's not like he went too late. He went 10th, so. Now, Mahomes already has a long list of accolades, but we're really going to focus on just a few of them. He's a 1-time Super Bowl champ, 1-time Super Bowl MVP, and a 1-time NFL MVP. And believe it or not, that MVP came in his first year as a starter, no less, in 2018. He's a one-time first-team All-Pro selection, one-time second-team All-Pro pick, and a three-time Pro Bowler. He currently holds the NFL record for best quarterback rating. He looks primed to be the next Tom Brady. Well, no one can be Brady, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of time left. Mahomes is still a very good player, so we'll have to see what happens. But now we have the honorable mentions, and I discussed one player more than I probably should have, but tight end Travis Kelce. So Kelce was the one I really wanted to go with. I actually had typed Kelce originally, but I'm like, you know what, I can't say Kelce belongs in over Mahomes. If it's one or the other, you got to go Mahomes right now. But Kelce is basically already cemented himself as one of the best tight ends in NFL history. And he's only been playing for just under 9 years, since we're still in the midst of 2021. Now, Kelce has flourished with Mahomes under center, but he's just an amazing player to watch. It's safe to call him a future Hall of Famer, all said and done. Lastly, we have wide receiver Tyreek Hill. Now, Hill had a good rookie season, but he's just taken off from there. The way he has been playing, he'll make the Hall, but it is too early to tell, and you're relying on a lot. I mean, you're kind of relying on Mahomes to stay there, Mahomes to stay healthy, Tyreek to stay healthy, but yeah. Next, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. And this is a team that I almost wrote not available, but I just wanted to talk about this guy. So we're going with wide receiver Deshaun Jackson. I highly doubt he will make the Hall of Fame, okay? But he has a shot. And it's, of course, due to his dynamic playmaking. I mean, yesterday, the 19th of December, was the 11th anniversary of when... Yeah, 11th anniversary, my bad, of when he had his dynamic kick return for a touchdown that ended the Eagles' amazing comeback from a 31-10 deficit against the New York Giants. You guys know I had to mention that when I mentioned Deshaun Jackson. That was a fact of life. So, if every player on the Raiders were to retire today, Deshaun would have the best chance of making the Hall of Fame. And I mean, who's really there to compete with him? Derek Carr? No. Now, Jackson would mostly make the Hall due to what he did as an Eagle, a Buccaneer, and as a member of the Washington football team. He currently has the most 60-plus yard touchdowns in NFL history, and he's tied for the most 80-plus yard touchdowns in NFL history. He's a three-time Pro Bowler and a one-time second-team All-Pro selection. Now, we do have an honorable mention for Las Vegas, and that is going to be tight end Darren Waller. Now, Waller really broke out in 2019. Gotta thank the Ravens for letting him go mid-2018, put him on the practice squad. But he still has a long way to go before he can even be considered for Canton. There's just so much he has to do. I mean, you're talking about another decade of strong play and dominance, but I just don't see it happening. I just wanted to mention him. Next, we have the Los Angeles Chargers. And I'm going with defensive end, outside linebacker, Joey Bosa. Now, Bosa may not be the popular pick here in Los Angeles, but he is my pick. Since being selected in the first round of the 2016 draft, he's been a force. Now, he has dealt with some injuries, but I'm not going to jinx him by saying what I was saying about saying. So, 2021 has been a career year for him, and he's set the bar pretty high for future seasons. He's currently a three-time Pro Bowler, but this year should see him add to that list. Honorable mentions, there's a few of them. Tight end Antonio Gates. Now, Gates is going to make the Hall of Fame. The only reason he's not the pick here is because he's no longer on the team, and he has essentially retired. I think he's officially retired, so. Next, we have quarterback Phillip Rivers. Now, honestly, I'm intending on doing a video discussing, like, the mid-tier quarterbacks. So the Phillip Rivers discussion will be a video for another day. Best way to put it. And there'll be another player or two tomorrow that we'll talk about that are in that same group. But yeah. Then we have wide receiver Keenan Allen. Now, Allen is one of the better receivers in the game right now. That was a good play by Indianapolis. Now, he is one of the better players in the game right now, but we've seen better receivers have to wait to punch their tickets to Canton. I mean, look at Drew Pearson and Harold Carmichael. The two of them were basically some of the best receivers in the 70s, and they just got inducted into the Hall in 2020 and 2021. Well, 2021 and 2020, respectively. So, yes. You know, Allen's great, but he's still a while away. Lastly, I'm just going to mention two more players. I'm not going to go into too much detail because they're too young. Second year, first year. Quarterback, Justin Herbert. And I love cornerback, Asante Samuel Jr. But, I mean, way too early for either of them to even come up with predictions. Next, we have the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins, I went with corner Xavier Howard. Howard is this team's most likely Hall of Famer right now. A second-round pick in 2016, Xavier's been a stud. He grabbed a starting job as a rookie and never looked back. Howard is a very good player who opposing offenses have to game plan against. He is a great ball hawk, especially in recent years. He's led the league in interceptions twice, in 2018 and 2020. One of them was a co-lead, but doesn't matter. In the end, he led the league. Now, Howard, you know, don't let that fool you. He's still great in coverage, and he breaks up a lot of passes. He is a one-time first-team All-Pro selection, one-time second-team All-Pro pick, and a two-time Pro Bowler. If he continues playing at this level for another 5+ years, he has a legitimate case, but the fact that like his first year wasn't the best does kind of hold him back a little bit or make him have to do more. Next, we have the New England Patriots, and I already know this is going to be a pick that's going to cause some people to scratch their heads. I am going with wide receiver Matthew Slater. Wait, what? Yep. Now, honestly, no one else on this team calls out Hall of Fame to me. Brady's gone. Joe Tooney is gone. Belichick as a coach is disqualified from my listing. Mac Jones, way too young, way too early to even assume anything about him. So, there is one other player who could get some consideration, and we'll get to him in a little bit. Okay? We'll get to him in a little bit. But, why Slater? Well, simply put, he's an absolute star on special teams. Star may be actually underselling his impact. Slater fell all the way to the 5th round in the 2008 draft. And honestly, it's not too surprising. Teams didn't really care about special teams too much back then. Then we saw what happened with the Chargers a year after. And then people started to focus on special teams and say, hey, you know what? I need a good kicker. I need a good special teams player. I don't mind holding off, you know, getting rid of one of the old receivers on my team for a good special teams player that's younger. So, yeah. Now, the stats aren't all that impressive, but the accolades are there for Slater. He is a 5-time first-team All-Pro selection, 2-time second-team All-Pro, and a 9-time Pro Bowler. Now, if he joins the Hall, he'll be one of the few father-son duos because his dad was a great offensive tackle for the Rams back in the day. But I don't know if he's going to make it. I mean, the thing is, it's so difficult to comprehend all those first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro stuff. But then you look at it, it's like, wait a second, Slater doesn't really do much on offense. Why is he even considered here? Just how good he is on special teams. Anyway, honorable mention for the Patriots. 2 of them, of course. Safety, Devin McCourty is the big one. Now, McCourty may not be a superstar, but he has been a very good player for the Patriots since they drafted him in 2010. He's won 3 Super Bowls and is a 3-time second-team All-Pro selection. Of course, I couldn't do the Patriots without mentioning Tom Brady. Now, we're going to discuss him with the Buccaneers in the next video, but I just had to mention him here. I couldn't not mention Tom Brady. You have to when you're talking about the Patriots. I mean, when you talk about the Patriots, Tom Brady is the face of that franchise. No doubt at this point in time, Brady is the face of the Patriots. No doubt. Next, we have the New York Jets. Now, the Jets I went with linebacker C.J. Mosley. Now, at this point, there isn't really anyone on this team that can compete with what Mosley has done. He's one of the better linebackers from the 2010s, and while most of his impact has been in Baltimore, he's been in an absolute tear recently in 2021. Prior to this 2021 season, though, his stint in the Big Apple has been forgetful, to say the least, but he is more than making up for his lost time. He is a 4-time second-team All-Pro selection and a 4-time Pro Bowler, all of which came with the Ravens up to this point. Could always change. Now, there are good chance that he adds to that in 2021. I mean, he's just been so good. The problem is, fan Pro Bowl voting's over, and that's when he started to heat up. So he's relying on coaches and players and all that stuff to get him into the Hall, or get him into the the Pro Bowl. Now, I do have an honorable mention for this team, a couple honorable mentions. The first one is, of course, cornerback Darrelle Revis. Revis Island was the real deal. He spent 6 elite shutdown years, along with another 2, as a Jet. He was a crucial piece of that defense that helped guide the Jets to back-to-back AFC Championship games a decade ago. He should be a Hall of Famer, and he'll make the Hall as a Jet because his stints in other cities were either too short or completely, a dumpster fire like Tampa Bay. So, there's that. Lastly, we have center Nick Mangold. Now, Mangold spent 11 years as a feared center in New York, and he has a good case for the Hall, but if he makes the Hall of Fame, it won't happen for a while. He'll be one of those, last time on the ballot guys that makes it, or, a future Veterans Committee type of player that makes it. So, we're down to 2 more teams here for the AFC, and the next one is the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to go with quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. Now, if you were expecting anyone other than Roethlisberger, unfortunately for you, you're sadly mistaken. There was no way I couldn't not go Roethlisberger here. Now, honestly, I am tempted to do a video looking at the receivers he's worked with, and, the Roethlisberger effect, so to speak. There's plenty of players that, they leave Pittsburgh and they fall off a cliff. They look like they're amazing. Just quick example, Martavis Bryant. I mean, Bryant looked like a great player with Roethlisberger. Goes to, I think it was then Oakland, but either way, the Raiders, completely falls off a cliff. So many other players to look at, so possible video topic for another day. Now, Big Ben, though, he's a lock by Hall of Fame. Even though his off-the-field resume is far from positive. I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but no, just no. So, Ben currently sits 8th all-time in passing touchdowns and 6th in passing yards. He is a 2-time Super Bowl champ. He is a 6-time Pro Bowler, and he has led the league in passing yards twice. Now, you may have noticed I didn't mention any All-Pro team selections, but looking at the players he's gone up against in the 2000s, 2010s, is that really all that surprising? He had to go up against Favre, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. The list goes on and on and on. So, it's not all that surprising. It stinks. It's painful, but he can go without. Now, I do have an honorable mention for Pittsburgh, and that's, of course, linebacker TJ Watt. Now, with the way he's been playing since debuting in 2017, Watt is doing everything in his power to punch his ticket to the Hall of Fame. But again, there's still some time to go. He's been on a tear these past 2 years, though. Last team we have to discuss is the Tennessee Titans. So, the Titans, I'm going with wide receiver Julio Jones. Now, while his 2021 season has left much to be desired, Jones was one of the league's premier wide receivers in Atlanta for a decade. He was amazing. He was elite. He punched his ticket to Canton as a Falcon, and I don't want to say he's chasing a ring with the Titans, but Atlanta trending in the wrong direction, Julio's age trending in the wrong direction, thus send him to Tennessee, a team that really wanted a player like Julio, to help alleviate some of the pressure from other players, but hasn't really worked out. Regardless, Jones is a 2-time first-team All-Pro selection, 3-time second-team All-Pro selection, a 7-time Pro Bowler, and he is a member of the NFL 2010s All-Decade Team. He also led the NFL in receptions twice. Now, of course, I have an honorable mention for the Titans, and that is running back Derrick Henry. Henry has been nothing short of a workhorse for the Titans ever since they drafted him in 2016. Thanks, Jared Goff trade for that. Now, he still needs another 2 very strong seasons to officially punch his ticket, but watching him play is like watching a 70s style game. His play style, it takes me back. I'll talk to my dad about football. I'll be like, Derrick Henry was the closest thing to what we had when I was a kid. And I'm like, oh, that's, it's a good way to put it. So, anyways, this was my AFC video of the players I think are most likely to make the Hall of Fame. I didn't mention AJ Green for Cincinnati, but I will talk about him in Arizona. I wrote the 2 scripts separately, and I probably should have brought him over, but the first team I did was Arizona. So, that's why. That's on me. So, Cincinnati, AJ Green, if he makes the Hall of Fame, which he probably should, he'll make it as a Bengal, but Anyways, this was the most likely Hall of Famer from each AFC team. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a couple picks where I kind of had to stretch. You know, hey, I don't necessarily think like some of the players like Slater. I don't think he's gonna make it, but T.Y. Hilton, same thing. But we'll have to see. So, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this simulated game, and we'll watch the fourth quarter in the NFC video later today. But, hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a fun one to do. So, have a good one. Stay safe.